get a coffee before we get started? Wonderful. So like I said, we're going to be doing a panel, so we'll have our lovely panelists introduce themselves. Unfortunately, we're short one of our panelists. She's sick with food poisoning, so pray for her when she feels better. Yeah, it sucks, but she's doing okay, she told me. So yeah, so we'll go down the line. If you want to introduce yourself, you know, your name, pronouns, let us know if you're in high school or college, what you're studying, just, you know, a brief kind of background.
Hi, my name is Dale. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a senior at King State University. I'm a double majoring in political science and peace and conflict studies.
I'm Martha. I use she, her pronouns. I am a senior at Firestone High School.
Hi, my name is Yassine. I go by Heenan, and I'm a computer science major, graduating in May next year. So there's no one to my right. So
Just pass it down. Alright, so this is my microphone. You guys have one to share over there. So yeah, we'll just dive right into this. So I kind of came up with a list of questions. We'll kind of go down the line and see where the discussion takes us and go from there. So the first question I had, so this is like an interfaith dialogue, we're talking about religion here. What does religion mean to you, and how does that fit into your life? Jesse, you want to go first? He's my brother, I can do that. Go ahead, grab it.
right, forgot that we're not passing this. I didn't think much about this question in advance, so it's just really just I guess it's an unmoving point about which I define my paradigms, my morals, my lifestyle. It's it helps me understand my connection to my Creator. That's pretty much, it's a permeating factor of my life. That's pretty much all I can say.
I think religion to me is just a piece of me. I know that's kind of a vague answer, but I don't think there's really any other way to describe it. You know, it's always been a part of my life. It will always be a part of my life, no matter what I believe, no matter where I go in life. I'm always going to be Jewish. And I think that's just always going to stick with me.
What you guys said. I agree. It's a big part of my morals and also my identity. I don't really know. They kind of pretty much said it for me. I think I really like how individual it is for everybody and how much it guides people in their lives and their decisions and their connections to people.
So like, how does religion fit into your everyday life? How do you wear it on your sleeve? Do you wear it on your sleeve? Yeah. Do with that question what you will.
I wear Judaism on my sleeve.
How?
How?
How do I know you're Jewish? When I see you on the screen.
Well, depending, I usually wear a Star of David or a Hamsa, but sometimes I forget to put that on. But I'm very open about it. Sometimes in the world that we live in, we face a lot of hate, and people say that you shouldn't share that. But one of the first things when people ask me about my identity and my culture is I say that I'm Jewish. Because it is. It's part of how I grew up and part of who I surround myself with. And yeah, I guess that's the best way to put it. That's something I'm openly happy to talk about.
I think being a Jewish person in Akron, Ohio, in the observancy that I am at my level of observancy, I think it's a little bit more difficult to find ways that religion fits into my life. Akron, Ohio is not built for, observant Jews, which is totally fine, not all communities are. And I think that you ask anyone at my school, they know I'm Jewish. They've never met me, they've never talked to me, they know I'm Jewish. It's not something I hide, it's something I'm really open about and I talk about a lot, and I've had to make a lot of choices about my Judaism and had to sometimes sacrifice things in terms of my faith. And so, yeah, it's just never been something I hide. I'm very open about the fact that I'm Jewish, very proud of it.
As far as how it fits into my daily life, we know that in Islam, pray 5 times a day, so it helps give structure to your day. In fact, it's from the tradition that Allah gave us the day and the night. The night is to rest and the day is to work. These types of things help us naturally sort of structure our daily life. But as far as how it works on an identity level, people kind of know I'm Muslim just from my name. Muhammad is my middle name, and literally. And also, I mean, if Yusra, our fourth panelist, were here, she could shed some light on our Muslim sisters, how they wear hijab, which is as clear an indication of your religion as possible, really. Many times they have to hear discrimination, discriminatory remarks and things like that, which we don't have to deal with as much. But we are definitely proud of it, right? When you feel like you're on the truth, when you feel confident about your religion, how could you not be?
And like, I did forget to mention this in the beginning, like we have 3 people on our panel, and obviously each of these questions are like the answers that I am expecting from them are obviously subjective. We can't speak on everybody's experiences, so I do appreciate you mentioning about how Muslim women may be perceived and how the struggles that they have to deal with. And I guess this question also is very subjective, but I know Yassine, you're very involved here at the masjid. How does the masjid, or in your case the synagogue, have any importance in your life and the life of your peers, people your age? How do you engage with the mosque?
Right. Well, in my case, I volunteer at the masjid on a regular basis. I'm a youth organizer here, so actually a few of the youth that we work with on a regular basis have events with are here in attendance. And also, I attend regular services every Friday. I'm here. So you could say that it is part and parcel of my life. Also, I went to the Islamic school here for 10 plus years, 10 years, I think, pre-K through 8th grade. But I skipped 1 year of preschool because I was crying a lot. So it was a big part of my experience, to say the least. It has a lot of importance. As for my peers, I can pretty much say the same. In any Muslim community, the mosque is a community center. This was the precedent set 1,400 years ago as that mosque is a community center. It is present in the lives of Muslims. So, yeah.
So I also grew up in a synagogue. I have been going to Anshe Sfar, which is the Orthodox synagogue in Akron, for my entire life. I went to Sunday school every single Sunday, pretty much until I was 13, 14. And even in the times, the question kind of asked about importance, so even in the times when I didn't want to go, and I think every child has a phase where they don't enjoy going to services, and even in those times, I still felt the importance of it, and I still felt the sense of like being surrounded by Jewish people and being surrounded by your community is still like important.
I also grew up in the synagogue up until after my bar mitzvah. I think that's a common thing. You know, around a lot of the Jewish kids who kind of fade away after our quitting and smoked. Some people stick through and volunteer, but I kind of lost my connection with the synagogue for a little bit after that, but regained it by participating in events with Hillel at my university. So we do services there for holidays, Shabbats, and I've been getting myself back to that and being a part of that community there, which has been really amazing.
And I will say that my own personal experience has been very similar to my brother's. Like, I went to school here, kindergarten to 8th grade. I have been so involved because my parents have been involved in the community, and I've been stuck with like Ivana and the youth committee and like doing all these different things for the women's committee and interfaith committee and all these different work. But my observation has been like, usually youth end up coming to the mosque or the synagogue because their parents are here. Like, I was here during full-time school, we'd stay for Jummah services afterwards, and then our parents would pick us up. And that would continue on until we graduated, and then once high school and college hits, everyone disappears. Why do you think that happens?
I think that for me, that growing up when you're in the synagogue, you're only really taught one way of thinking about things. And when I got older and started learning that there were different ways to examine Judaism, and not just Judaism, but other religions, I wanted to set out for myself on a spiritual journey of what religion itself meant to me and my connection to Judaism. So I've been able to learn about other types of Judaism that kind of don't necessarily have synagogues here. I also think that life kind of gets really consuming, and we're in a phase where you have to be doing all these different things at once, and I think, I don't know, for me, that was like the easiest thing to kind of put on the back burner because I felt like I always had a home there and always had a sense of Judaism in my life, even if I wasn't always going to the synagogue.
To me, there are kind of two pieces to that question. So the first piece for me is, I think you really start to have to make the active choice to be a part of the community. There are always things that get in the way: soccer games, dance recitals, everything will get in the way of your faith, especially when you are not the majority religion in your community. And I think as a teenager, you're trying to explore your identity in your religion and out of your religion, and what you like, what you don't like. For me, making that choice was really hard at times, and having to choose my faith over play practice or whatever it was not always easy. And I think a lot of teenagers just don't choose it and would rather be at their rehearsals or football games or whatever it is. I think the other piece of that for me is, I've always said, having a positive experience with your religion is the thing that will make or break it for you. And I think if you, as you said, if you're just going with your parents because your parents are going and you have to, and you never have your own positive experience with your faith, that's when it starts to fade away. So I went to a Jewish summer camp for 10 years now, maybe. And that has been life-changing on my perspective for my Judaism, and being surrounded by Jews and not having to explain myself and just getting to be who I am. And that positive experience has made Judaism what it is to me.
I concur in regards to a lot of what you said, especially about the point where it becomes a conscious choice. Once you start to drive yourself places, once you start to make decisions for yourself, your parents, your family can only take you so far. You have to take that leap for yourself, and that's where some youth make that choice, or don't know how to make that choice. Maybe they weren't adequately prepared, or maybe they're still figuring it out. I know I experienced that myself, where in the last maybe 2-3 years, I really felt a sort of, Yassine, this is now your prerogative. It's not something that's being done for you. Your religion is something that you navigate. And you have to kind of take the bull by the horns on that one. So that's like a very conscious choice that, in this environment, like you said, especially, so if you look at Muslim youth and they go to high school, what do they see? What do they experience? Do they feel like their religion is being facilitated by that environment? Likely not. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And why would they? What around them is telling them that their religion is cool? At that age, you really want to be cool. Simple things like that can really turn off youth towards their faith. And so that's something maybe we want to counter by, the summer camp that you mentioned. Muslim Youth of North America is an organization that has something very similar for Muslim youth. So those types of things really enable our youth to help navigate that choice. Yeah.
And with being a Muslim youth and going to high school, I want to go to prom, but is prom okay? So things like that, right? And I guess it kind of leads into another question that I had. Marco, you were talking about this earlier. Growing up in the U.S., with the dominant narrative being the Christian narrative, and there's a certain image of what American culture looks like. How does that impact your view on religion and religious institutions, and how, I'm not asking you to speak on your peers, but what is the general consensus of that? You guys have the questions for the week? They were ready. I can start.
I think growing up in the United States, where we have this concept of separating church and state, even those words make me feel kind of negatively about my religion, separating church and state. And as I think many people in this room have maybe experienced, that's not always the case. And sometimes you have to lead your life by what the Christian religion is expecting of you. And that's been really hard, I think, and I think there's less of that now in our like, modern day. But it was the principle of what our country was founded on. And so those kinds of systems I don't think are fully gone. I don't think there's a true separation of church and state at all times. So that kind of gives me a negative view, I would say, on religious institutions. I've always said though that Jewish people have it pretty good in the United States. Even no matter what we face, there's always going to be negative things, but we have it pretty good in the US. And I'm very grateful for that.
I agree with what you're saying about having it good news. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, and if you don't mind repeating it, something that you had said was that you can always hide that you're Jewish. You shouldn't have to hide that you're Jewish, but that is something that you can do. And when we face other things like hate in this world, like racism, you can't hide the color of your skin. So that is something that is true when it comes to like facing our identity, but you shouldn't, like you said, you shouldn't have to hide that. And something I've faced, especially within school, is that there's a lot of there's very little education about other religions, whether that be about Islam or Judaism. There's a lot of education about Christianity in school. I mean, people talk about so many religious, not necessarily the Bible, but I just remember so many educational pieces that were just right across the point of being like they were teaching Christianity in school. I mean, we used to say the pledge in school, which talks about our God, which is not necessarily the God that everybody is the same. We talk about this a lot in my classes as well. I'm trying to think, I had another point about school, but I can't remember it right now. But I do think, I agree with you with the separation of church and state, that it's very Christian, and there's not really a space for other religions to be able to identify themselves, especially in like public education.
So the lack of secularism that was addressed earlier is a very prevalent reality that we experience. That the laws that govern the United States were primarily thought of in a Christian context. And also, I mean, on the exact flip side of that, something that we're kind of seeing more of is almost like a radical secularism as well, which does have some anti-religious sort of sentiment kind of wrapped in there, but very subtly. Like, they want to say everyone can be anyone, but at the same time, you sometimes find a hint of anti-religion in it. So that's also something that maybe that's like really, it feels new, and so navigating that is also a bit of an odd sensation. That's really the only thing I wanted to add. You guys have some good points.
I mean, I was just bouncing off what you said about school. I mean, an example is like every school break is
I was just
designed
say
around,
that.
you know,
In our
Christmas.
work weeks, like our like actual like days.
And, you know, I take off a lot of school for things like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I get a truancy letter every single year because I take off summer school for my holidays. And, you know, I've faced consequences for that. And that is because our country and especially our community in Akron, Ohio is very based around the Christian faith. Anyone else?
I mean, I know I agree. I mean, I'm still at the point where I have to get a letter to get out of class from Hill Elves to say that I have services, which is, yeah, it's wild to me that we still have a work week based around a religious schedule in a sense, like in classes and everything. I mean, do our schools, that's I guess the final question, how do schools work in Utah to pray and stuff like that? If you pray 5 times throughout the day, how does that work?
Like I personally, I didn't go to public high school and neither did GSU, so I don't think we can really talk on that, but from like what I've heard from other people, like that's also quite a struggle. Sometimes you'll get like a guidance counselor who's nice enough to let you like pray in the corner of their office, and like during your lunch break you'll pray. I know that at Kent State they have a full like prayer room designated, and they have like washing spaces for people to make wudu. And that's accessible all day long as long as the student center is open. So like it's great to see like academic institutions making accommodations like that. Because it's not strictly for Muslims. It's like anybody can go there. Like I've seen guys go in there and just meditate, and like it's a great space. It's just a good quiet space, and yeah, but I think that academic institutions definitely need to take more consideration to this, like, because you have a diverse, group of students, right? So you want to make sure you're accommodating them all properly.
Yeah.
And not just academic institutions, like workplace.
Yeah.
Like I have to request off for like eat prayers. Which day do you need off? I don't know. It's gonna be on this day or the next day. We don't know what the moon's gonna be like. Moon sightings. It's a fun time. But technology's advanced enough where we kind of have a better idea now. But still, they're like, oh, you can't request 2 days off. Like it's just simple things like that. Like I should be able to practice my religion and not have to go through this back and forth with my boss about things like that. Luckily, my boss has been very supportive, but not everyone has a nice boss. So that can be a bit of a struggle, but let's see. I was trying to think of where I was going to go with that. But I guess an interesting thing I wanted to mention, we were talking about this with our last session, which last month we talked about Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and racism, and how we can combat that in our own communities. And we talked a lot about social media and how social media plays a role in that. So I guess one of the questions that we were talking about that we wanted to discuss today was how does social media impact your connection with your faith? Does it bring you closer? Does it push you away? How do you feel about that?
So everyone's fairly well acquainted with the potential harms of social media, but in a youth lens, in a religious youth lens, I think I could maybe talk about that a little bit. I think in my own individual case, it's been maybe, as far as positive, negative, it's been maybe a 75-25% split, in the sense that thankfully 75% of it has been positive for my religious identity, for my religious experience. I've been able to kind of get content in my feeds that have been beneficial and knowledgeable. It's helped me connect with scholars of Islam, and to that extent, it's been really beneficial. I've also been able to connect to Muslims that I would not have initially been able to, which is a huge benefit to social media, right? It's made the entire community that much closer. In the same breath, it's also had a flip side, because in social media, especially Instagram, there's a culture of vanity, which is very, very prevalent, which is a very sort of un-Islamic concept, this idea of showing off in reveling in worldliness. That's something that's very, very kind of shocking to someone who wants to form their value system around the religion, along with just other types of things that Islamically are immoral. That becomes a lot more accessible to someone's feed. If you just look at what I might get right out of the box, right? I download Instagram, I put in my information. Now it knows that I am an 18-year-old male, so in the United States. So what do you think it's going to give me? What is the algorithm going to think I find attractive?
You're going to get all the Andrew Tate material.
Andrew Tate material, right? There's shoddy entrepreneurial advice, car videos, those types of things, and also they're going to show me women, things that if I'm confident and trying to prioritize my religion, I really don't want to see that. And over time, and by consciously making an effort to mark these things as not interested, I can now curate what's in my feed. But straight out of the box, it's not like that. And 9 times out of 10, youth aren't going to go through the extra effort of marking things as not interested. So now they're going to see it, and how is that going to be positive for the religion? That's one of the negative effects of social media.
I think that I have faced some pieces of negative things to my religion on social media. I think we're in a very new age of young activism on social media, which I think can be a really, really good thing for many, many reasons. But I also think that clicking repost is really easy. And as a person who's, 14, 15, 16, and isn't so much interested in doing research on a topic and sees the repost button, they click it. And they're like, oh, this seems like a thing I should have people talking about and I should raise awareness for, so I'm going to, and I'll repost it. And I think I have faced a bit of people reposting things, for example, with no research. And while the intention is, I would say, 98% of the time very good and strictly for raising awareness, I have faced some pieces of people posting things with anti-Semitic wording. Anti-Semitic wording is truly the only example, but it's kind of scary to see how easy it is for someone to do something that can be harmful towards me and my family and my religion. And it's, as I said, it's 98% of the time just someone wanting to raise awareness for an issue they think is important. And I applaud that, while also being scared that we can repost something so easily without knowing any of the background, history, research on anything. So I think that is a very negative piece of social media.
You guys pretty much covered that. I agree that social media can be just as harmful as it can be beneficial. Since you guys kind of talked a lot about the harmful sides of it, maybe I'm trying to talk about the more beneficial sides. I agree that you have to do the work. You can repost anything, any infographic or reel or whatever somebody shares, but unless you're just trying, like, before I usually repost something, I try to go look at what that person's message is constantly about, what they're sharing, where they're getting their information from, because I do reshare a lot. I am big on trying to educate people because social media is one of the only ways people will listen, or at least get interested in listening. With that, I have made a lot of connections on social media. In a sense, I wouldn't be here without it, but I got more involved with wanting to open up a dialogue like this because of social media, seeing other sides. Because if you go open your phone, like you said, you'll see certain things that you don't want to see unless you're doing the work to seek out what you want to see and what you want to hear. You're not going to see or hear it. But I have been able to make connections. Like there's a cohort of Jews of color that I have been going to these online Zoom panels about educating about diversity within Judaism, which I would have never been connected to if I hadn't seeked that out on social media. So I do think that there's benefits, but it's not how you use it consciously and mindfully.
No, I saw that flyer for the Hillel event with us.
Yeah, that's
Ethiopian Jewish.
Yeah, so we're having
That
that.
was really neat.
We're doing that tomorrow. Yeah.
No, like social media is like a double-edged sword. It can be good, it can be bad. It's like with everything in life, it's difficult. But I mean, not like in terms of like religious experience, but like with my organizing as like a political organizer, like I've used social media to like meet so many different people, like virtually than actually getting to meet them in person. Like I've met a lot of people who do organizing with the Filipino liberation movement and with Latin American organizing. Like it opens the floodgates for like so many different types of people you can meet, but also you get impressionable younger people who are seeing content like Andrew Tate and like all these different things that you don't want them seeing, and like that's how we see a lot of these children kind of falling into like the spiral of like far right conservative like media. It's from social media, right? Like they pick on a couple of things and pick on their insecurities and then just go down that rabbit hole. So it's dangerous. And I remember a few years ago, I went to Kent State. Graduated about a year ago, but this is probably my first year there. I was the president of the Muslim Student Association at the time, and there was a graphic like circulating on social media for like some national day of harassing Muslims. I don't remember the exact language of it, but it was like a scorecard of like punch a Muslim guy and like 10 points for that, and like 100 points if you rip a scarf off a Muslim girl's head. So like that stuff scared the hell out of us. So it's dangerous, like what people can do and how emboldened they can feel by using social media because they can hide their identities. So it's an interesting time that we live in. Anyways, moving from that, I guess since we're talking about hate towards us, and how about like I don't want to be like how do you guys hate people, but like what prejudices and biases might you have for like the other? Like I'm not gonna say like oh I hate Jewish people, no, I love you guys. But like I'm saying that like we grew up with we're raised by our parents, and what's instilled in us is usually what they are telling us and teaching us. So I guess a better way to frame this question would be like, how has your family, like your community's prejudices and biases shaped you and how you view the world and how you view other people? You have the mic, Niels. Do you want to go first?
First bite.
Thanks. I definitely would say that I grew up with prejudices in my community, but I don't like to hold on to them. Because I don't want somebody to hold prejudice against me. So when I look at somebody, I try with my hardest, and this is something that I'm learning and growing on my journey of, is to not make any judgments about who they are and their identity until I really give them a chance to get to know them, and then I'll make those assumptions. Because I face somebody just telling somebody that I'm Jewish, and they're going to make all these assumptions about my privileges or my whatever because of the stereotypes that I might they might hear, and I would never want to put that onto another person, so I really refrain from that for myself. But I'm not going to lie and say that there aren't things within, especially in the Jewish community that you hear. I mean, I remember being told all different types of people don't like us because of this and that and the other, and that we shouldn't like this person because of this or that, and I just don't think it's fair. But that's still a journey that I'm on myself, so I don't know how else to elaborate with that. Yep, that's fair.
I would say that growing up in this world, this is kind of tied to social media, but you always have the internet in your pocket. You have access to the entire world at your fingertips pretty much all of the time. And so I think that part being said, I have tried to use the piece of the internet and social media that is better in educating myself about other people and other practices before I make a judgment. This world is filled with prejudice, and it was brought up for prejudice. And being an American citizen, you hear a lot of things about the Muslim community, and I think as a Jewish person, not that I understand at all what the Muslim community feels and goes through, but I think I feel it in a different way than someone who has never, I would say, not that I was raised the same things as anyone in the room, but I say I feel it in a different way. I feel like the hate that other people get in a different way because I've experienced so little of my own, people being biased against me or prejudiced against me. It gives me a different perspective for others, and I don't think I'm wording this very well, but that being said, because I have felt a little tiny, minuscule amount of prejudice against me, I try and put aside what biases I have had from being both a Jew and an American citizen.
Well, they talk about every facet of prejudice. I think I might try to say something a little different. So, by and large, prejudice just means prior judgments, preconceived notions. So, a lot of that can just be combated by learning more about everyone else, and having that sense of being good-natured, assuming the best in others, these types of things. There is the concept of exclusive truth, which is maybe a different facet I wanted to touch on. Exclusive truth meaning, I think 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. Someone else thinks 1 plus 1 is equal to 3. Well, only one of us can really be right here. Similarly, if you think you're right about something, and it's an issue on which, only one answer is right, then inevitably you think, well, they're wrong. And if that's the case, and I'm not saying that you're wrong for thinking that, I'm not saying you're right for thinking that, but should that ever affect the respect with which you should treat a person? Absolutely not, right? You shouldn't just be nice to people who agree with you. And so that's where the difference between your own views, which one could rule as prejudice, and your actions come into play. So that's just my own kind of side comment. But my own prejudice is just, I don't think that, I'm not going to say I'm not prejudiced, but that's probably the most significant area about which I would say, like, well, if I believe I'm in possession of exclusive truth, then the danger is becoming conceited in that, like, hey, I'm right, everyone's wrong, I'm superior. That's the biggest danger to that. As for cultural prejudices, things like that, the way you see that, if there's an injustice that occurs and people say, hey, we need to be calling out the aggressor or the oppressor, and people take social media, they call out, they say, why aren't people talking about this injustice that's happening? But then the people who are doing this calling out are now being given certain labels, right? They're anti-this, they're anti-that, they're problematic, and then they get canceled. That's not good, clearly. And so the same people who encounter that, sometimes the flip side occurs right now. People like in the Muslim community need to be told that like anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are two different things. That yes, you can be anti-Zionist and but it's not the same thing as being anti-Semitic. No one should be anti-Semitic. So those are things that sometimes Muslim youth see in their households, that there's an accidental conflation that occurs, and they don't know what to make of it. So sometimes they educate themselves and realize that, oh, my parent just doesn't know how to vent their frustration. But other youth just take it for what it is and assume that they're the same thing. So that's just one of the things.
It's about breaking that generational trauma. Like, what's the word for it? The generational. I'm trying to think of it. It's like breaking the chain, kind of, is what I'm trying to think of. Because, like, we talk about this with, like, everything else, and not just, like, with that topic specifically, like, and I'm not talking about my mother, but I'm just saying it's an example of, like, say, like, I'm a person who is, like, growing up in a South Asian household. My mother is used to a certain experience of, like, and then her grandmother was used to a certain experience, and their mother, and this chain just goes on, of, like, you need to break that chain at some point. And I was going to mention that media plays a lot into fueling our prejudices and biases, right? They give us these caricatures, these stereotypes of what they think the other looks like. So if I just based it fully off of like media, and I would see like, oh, then because this Jewish character is a certain way, all Jewish people really like money and like have very stereotypical Jewish names. Like that's literally not how that is. And like you can look at Muslim characters, especially post 9/11. They're all just really, really brown people with really deep accents, and they like to blow up planes. No, these are very, very like harsh stereotypes. But like that's what a lot of people look at, and like if they are afraid of something, they'll take that and they'll feel their anger and hatred and fear, and they can lash out and like hurt so many people around them. Media is wild.
True.
But yeah, let's see here. I don't know where to go from that. Sorry, I just lost my own thoughts. But I guess a question that I wanted to ask after, like, we discussed like prejudice and bias, but and this is like a loaded question. But how do we move forward in our communities as youth in addressing like issues of hate and prejudice that may be a result of like generational trauma and like internalized hate is I think the word that we kind of thought of earlier. But like how do we move forward? How do we educate our communities? How do we educate the youth? And how do we go forward from there?
I understand you want to talk about this.
I think this is the example of what we need to be doing, is talking and having a dialogue. We can hide behind our phones and social media, but until you sit face to face with somebody and learn about their experience and see the humanity behind it, we'll never be able to understand each other. We're going to just sit in our prejudices and sit in ignorance. And there's work that needs to be done. People are willing to learn once you put it in front of them, but I guess it's the same thing. Lead a horse water, you can't make them drink, but I think you can. I think you can, because it's uncomfortable to sit, at least for me, in that ignorance. Like, and if I don't know and don't learn about someone and learn to accept them, I can't sit comfortably like that. So, I am trying to do the work. Coming to stuff like this is just, it's so perfect. Pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zones is the best thing that you can do. You have to get uncomfortable to be able to learn, but that's how you make a difference, and that's how you make the work. You have to face your own hate. I think that's the best way to say it is if when you face your own hate yourself and make somebody else face their own hate, that's when you can change the world, because someone can sit 1,000 miles away and say all these horrible things about you and your religion, but when you sit there face to face, it makes them a lot more uncomfortable sitting there telling them all these terrible things about you. I've tried it, I've had these conversations before, and I've really had full circle realizations where this person's like, wow, I had all these stereotypes about you being Jewish in my head, and then I realized that you're just a person like me trying to, do this rat race, and you really see the humanity in things. So I think it's about the dialogue and getting to know each other and talk to each other, opening up your mind and your heart. It's easier said than done, but if you want to make a difference, then you gotta do it.
Listening. I think, I love to talk. I love to argue. I will admit it. I love to argue. I love to talk. But I'm really bad sometimes at listening. And I get very stuck in my own opinion. I'm pretty stubborn, my parents will tell you. But I think that listening is the only way to really get through to that dialogue, to make the horse straight. I think you only ever really see the perspective, not just from having a conversation, but thinking about that conversation afterwards and considering what that has meant to you and listening to the other side of anything. It's the only way you'll ever break through a prejudice or a bias or whatever it is.
I don't have much to add, really. Learning, listening. Listening is a lost art, really, especially among our youth. Sometimes we forget to really listen and open ourselves to the risk of change. That's probably one of the biggest things, because if that were the case, there would be little to no prejudice and hatred if there was that much openness to learning and changing. This was where did we go from your question?
Yeah, it was one before that.
It was the one before that. How do we go forward? Oh, gotcha. As for generational trauma and the oftentimes suffering that arises from it, one thing we can do is be observant. What is this? What do the symptoms and causes of this look like? I was having a very good conversation with a cognitive science student who said that really we need to understand the part we have to play in all of this, the part that everyone plays, and how the causes lead to certain harms that we see in our daily life, how we can treat them, and then how we can understand how our minds kind of process this, how we internalize them, and unpack it bit by bit. It's a slow, arduous process, but we really need to be conscious about it. Yeah, it's on.
We have to acknowledge and understand the struggles of people rather than just dismissing it because we have an agenda.
Right.
It's about understanding where they're coming from, why they think the way they think, and then moving from there with them, right?
I guess with the generational trauma part, I think that how do I word this? It's not. It comes to a lot of the education, like you said. There's so much that we learn from our parents, so you can't really, you can't go back in time. But just maybe moving forward is just teaching our youth to question things and to think for themselves and to realize that we're all just human beings. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around teaching kids anything but that, really. So it is about teaching your kids to listen and teaching them to speak up for themselves and have those conversations and speak up for other people too. Because I don't think we can teach our kids that enough nowadays, to stand up for other people. So I think that's about that I had to add.
I guess I'm kind of tying this panel to sort of a close with these last few questions here. But so where do we go from here? What has being on this panel taught you? How has this been? How has this impacted your experience? What are you going to take away from this? What do you think about this 10 years from now? Be this was a great panel I was on. Because I had a really great moderator and she made it.
Right.
Well, I was planning on continuing coming to these meetings.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
And I'm a little disappointed. I had seen a lot of people, actually, I posted this all week on my social media. The leader of my Hillel had actually liked it, messaged me saying that he was so proud. All these people reshared it, none of them came. It's a little disappointing. But it's okay, because you guys are here, and that's what matters. So thank you. I definitely have learned a lot already it's pushed me to want to continue to open up more. I attended an SJP meeting with you, and I'm going to continue going to that, and also continuing to try to, I don't know, I think that this could be beneficial to do at university, is to open up some sort of dialogue or something along these lines. But again, continuing to educate myself on how to get more people to be involved and want to listen and discuss.
I think this panel in particular is really unique because you're hearing from youth and from people who are living in the now, I guess I would say, of the reality of what our religions look like. Because especially in the modern day of technology, social media, the internet, all those things, there are a lot of differences, even in the way that my parents grew up, and especially in the way that my grandparents grew up. So this experience is very unique, and I think that where do we go from here? Listening to the youth, listening to the people who are living a different experience than you lived, because every single human being's experience in life is different, even if you're sister and brother, even if you're married, no matter what, your experience is different. And parent to child, the experience is so different. Even if you live in the same place, doing the same things every day, my experience is very different from what my parents lived. And I think listening to children is actually kind of a Jewish concept, because in Judaism, we're taught to like question, wait, but why do we dip the thing in the salt water twice, and why do we do this thing? And I think that should be a concept in everyone's life. Like, teach the children to question things, and teach the adults to listen to the children's questions, and to really internalize the experience of the children.
Well said. Absolutely. And I think there are a couple things we should take note about this panel. I've only met Dale twice, at the SJP event and then the last JM Dialogue. And I've never met you before, Martha. And yet, the degree of consistency that you saw in this panel, that there's a lot of shared experiences, shared thoughts, that's a good thing in many ways. And at the same time, our diverse backgrounds also add the element of richness. And then also, you said listening to your kids, everyone here is stunningly quiet and observant of what everyone here is saying at the panel. And that's exactly what we should be doing, is listening to each other really well. As for, in Islam, there's a concept of the fitrah, the innate state of the human being. And so that only gets changed as we grow up. So who is the closest to that innate state, that beautiful natural state, is the children. So there's so much we can learn and check ourselves with by observing our kids and learning from them. Abraham himself questioned the beliefs of his ancestors, of his father, and that landed him in trouble, but we wouldn't be here without all that, right? So that's really just to add on to what they were saying.
I think that ties perfectly to my last question that I had here, is how do you feel youth in your religious communities, religious centers, can be better supported by their elders and the religious and community leadership?
I'll hop on that real quick. Put my youth organizer hat on, because we've been working on that, and alhamdulillah, thankfully we've gotten a lot of support from the mosque in organizing these activities. It's been a constant effort, but how to properly engage with the youth is always a challenge, because you're not youth and you're trying to engage with youth. It's at the same time, there are so many different age groups, and the manpower to engage with them all in a way that is almost tailored to fit them is a challenge, right? Because we're working with kids between 13 and 17 pretty much. And what about college age youth? What are we doing for them? They have their MSAs at Muslim Student Associations, they have halal, but that's not coming from us. And as for MSA, there isn't that tie into the mosque as much, and there isn't that scholarly guidance either, and things like that we can help provide with imams and scholars and such and speakers. So I think supporting this as the way we're doing now is a great first step, but we shouldn't stop that. We've got to continue it and up the ante.
I think I kind of touched on this a little bit, just like listen to your children. my family, something I really, really appreciate about the way that I was raised is my parents have never discredited a word I've said just because I was young, just because I was a child, because I have a different perspective on them. And sometimes I'm wrong. I don't like to admit it, but sometimes I'm wrong because I'm a child. And my parents have never been like, you're 12, what are you? It's never been that. It's always been a conversation. It's always been, but why do you believe that? But why are you thinking that way? But why is this the conversation we're having? And that's really important, I think. Not discrediting, and because I was raised that way, whenever an adult discredits my opinion, I get very angry. Like, listen to me. So I think that is a shared experience among youth in kind of any community. But especially, I would say, the Jewish world, because in the Jewish world, it's, if you don't talk now, you're never going to talk. So you got to get it in, you got to have people listen to you, or you're never going to get to say what you want to say. So I think, kind of what I said before, just listen, just think about what your kids are saying, your grandkids are saying. As I said, you don't have the same experience that they have, and you don't know what it's like to be in their shoes.
I really agree with what they say. It's also about a university, since you kind of said like what are we supposed to do with university students. I think I'm facing a little conundrum with my relationship with Hillel about this, because I think that, I don't know, I'm just a little disappointed that nobody came to this, because I think that this is a conversation that we need to be having. I mean, they just sent a whole group of kids on a perspectives trip to the Middle East. And the fact that like kids came back wanting to know more questions, they had more questions than they went. And there's been like no supplement to any, especially since most of these kids were not Jewish. There's no been like supplement to continuing their education about it. I've expressed it, I've gone to SJP and expressed about this, and the questions that I've been getting are not necessarily the questions that they should be asking. They should be like asking, how can we continue to support you and support your voice, and get other Hillel members to have this conversation. And I'm going to keep fighting for people, because there are people who want to be a part of the conversation and want this type of dialogue. But I think that there needs to be more work on universities and stuff, at least in my perspective. Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys want to do?
Actually, I just did one tiny little point. Martha said it. I kind of have to take this opportunity to express my gratitude. Blah blah blah. But you fostered like this robust exchange of ideas and like this intellectualism in the household. Exactly like she said. I never felt like I was being humbled for my age when I asked a hard question. Instead, you were very magnanimous with this impertinent little kid. So, thank you.
Aww. So cute. But if there's nothing else that you guys want to talk about, I'd like to thank our panelists for being put on the spot tonight. Thank you for having such an insightful conversation with me tonight. I want to turn this around to our attendees here, our audience. You sat very patiently and listened to our youth here on the panel. Do you have any thoughts, any questions that you'd like to talk to them about and hear what they have to say? I can bring the mic down to you.
I just wanted to say that I feel very hopeful about your generation. I think that you kids are fair, you're honest, you listen to each other, and feelings that were buried in our generations are coming out and sharing, and I think this can only be good for this world.
That's a beautiful thought. Thank you.
To go back to your comment about missing classes and all that, the Senate bill was just introduced in Ohio to allow for 3 days off during a semester for religious holidays. It's got to go through the Senate, but it was just introduced. And then on a similar bill like this, will be going into effect in all Ohio colleges April 23rd, the students will have, whatever their religion, 3 days off during per semester. So it's something that can change. It's from a representative from Southern Ohio who got comments like that when she was campaigning for her Senate seat. Why do I get penalized because of my religion for missing a day of school? Or I can't participate in a sport because I missed that day. So thank goodness the Ohio Senate legislature is looking at this and going forward with it.
Thank you very much for the enlightenment. My question is this the audience that needed to hear this? And are you representing a subsection of the youth? Are most youth thinking like you are thinking? Or where does it fit? And you, the youth director, is this the most you can muster from Islamic Society of Akron? Is this the most you could bring today?
Okay, so your first question was, is this the right audience? My answer is, any audience is the right audience. We just need to talk to as many people as we can. We do want more youth, that's for sure. So that's the last item you discussed, is that we want more youth. Is this the most we can muster? No. We have a lot more youth that we can tap into, inshallah. The third one, or the second item was, are we a representative sample? I'm no statistician, but we could use a larger sample size, do some more analysis. But really, I think that we do bring a decent amount of diversity. As we mentioned, we had a fourth panelist who is sick, unfortunately, but that would have added to the sample size, been more representative. So there's always more to be done in that sphere.
The question is, your one segment, is this the prevalent thought process in majority of the youth, or are you the minority? Because that's what tells me whether I need to be optimistic or do I have a lot more work to do. In my own thing, I have grown from 50 years ago when I came to the US and where I am today. My prejudices have gotten better. I'm more accepting. I have learned a lot. I've grown a lot. The question that I have is, with over the past 6 years of polarization and everything, where do the youth sit? Are you representing a small minority of those youth? Are you a majority of those youth that are open and learning and where are they?
Well, I'll hand this over to Dale, but on the optimism point, I always encourage optimism. So,
I think you're right. Any audience is the right audience. But I do wish that there was more youth here. Again, I really did my part to try to share this with as many people. I remember you said at the last meeting, bring your neighbor. I invited my neighbor, they're not here. I really did. I texted friends before, people who I really thought would have been interested. So it's giving me the interpretation that we do have a lot more work to do. I think there are people who say that they're interested because they're my friend, and say they're not actually interested. And that means we just, like you said, I'm still optimistic about it. I'm not going to stop fighting. I'm not going to stop telling people to come to these things. But definitely, I think that we might be on the slighter side of the minority because just of the fact that people aren't willing to step outside of their comfort zones and learn. People are probably like, oh, it's a Thursday night. I want to do homework and go out with my friends. Yeah, guess what? I have to do all that too. But I'm still here trying to make it work. Getting out and doing homework. So.
Just to say one thing, I think in my ideal world, the audience for this is everyone here and also people who are not a part of our communities and people who have no idea what's going on in our communities and have never heard this group of people talk together ever. In my ideal, beautiful world, that is the ideal audience. I also do think, for me personally, I am more of the minority in my community because I don't know a single other Jewish 17-year-old in Akron, Ohio who is as observant as I am. I'm not a single one who lives in my community, who goes to the school I go to, who participates in Shabbat the way that I do, who keeps kosher the way that I do. I'm the only one, except for my brother. But that is sad and scary for me, and unfortunately that's the way that this community is right now. And we could do more to engage the youth, and we should, and this is a step in the right direction.
Did anyone else want to say anything? Any questions, comments for our panelists?
I've heard conversations among some of the folks that are here of concern for Jewish, Muslim, Christian relations at Kent State. Can you give us any insights into the tensions between the religious communities at Kent State and what is being done to help students to understand someone that is not from their religious tradition?
I guess I'll start this one. I think, this is a complicated answer. I think that there is a big disconnect at Kent State. There's a lot, if you go to Kent, there's about a church on every corner. The only place, I'm sure this is what the closest mosque to Kent, besides the place that they have on campus.
There's a mosque in Kent, actually.
There is? Okay, well, we don't have a synagogue in Kent. We just have a small chapel inside of our Hillel. The nearest temple, I'm pretty sure, is in Akron. Yeah, but I don't know, even with my experience in Hillel, so I went to the SJP program, and one of my directors from Hillel wasn't really concerned about what I learned, but about what language was being used. That kind of threw me off, because instead of supporting me and wanting to connect with the Muslim community on campus, and not even just the Muslim community, but the people who are supporting another cause, it deterred me. I think that there might still be prejudices that need to be fought on campus. I also had an experience with a professor who was saying very anti-Semitic things in class, made very threatening statements when kids in class had voiced that they were going to an Israel celebration on campus. So it's really gone both ways on campus with Christianity. I mean, Kent's a PWI, so it's mostly, white Christian kids, or non-religious, but yeah, I think that there's a disconnect, and I wish that there was more, like a dialogue between people on campus.
Like, I think I could talk a bit on this too, as somebody who I did graduate a year ago, but I've kept the pulse of Kent State's, environment for the past 5-6 years. And I will say that I think COVID had a lot to do with it, a lot of the disconnect that happened, because like I said, I was involved with the MSA, the Muslim Student Association. I was on the board for a while. I was also involved with SJP, which is Students for Justice in Palestine, which has a lot of Muslim membership. But when I was organizing on campus, I made sure I had good relations with everybody. I knew the Hillel president at the time. I knew people in some of the some of the Christian organizations. There are a lot of Christian organizations on campus. I have kept in touch with some of the advisors at the United Christian Ministries. UCM is one of the major student groups on campus. Lauren Scott, she's their advisor, and she actually is part of the religious studies program at Kent, who we do visitations with at this mosque, and I have helped coordinate those. So I will say that I don't know personally about any tensions that may be on Kent State's campus, but I will say if there's a disconnect, it's, I would say, purely because of COVID and people losing touch and people graduating and the connections getting lost.
I just wanted to add, I mean, this is kind of a little off topic, but there's some disconnect though. I mean, the same time, in May of 2022, I was out of the country and I got an email that a swastika had been vandalized outside of the Hillel. This was just a year ago. Just a few weeks ago, there were some very racist remarks painted outside of our one campus building. That was the first campus building to be named after a black professor. And so we still face things like that on our campus. I think it's because, there is a lot of hate in institutions and educational institutions that we are fighting constantly. It's sad. Sorry about that.
I can take one more comment or question if anyone has anything to share.
Well, I'll ask, what would you want the leadership of ISAK and the temple to do to encourage this dialogue further?
This dialogue being the Jewish Muslim dialogue? Or like
Is
youth?
it
The youth?
you are the future.
Anyone
So
want to
what
answer?
are the opportunities for us, the concrete opportunities that we need to work on?
What are tangible goals that you would like to see from your religious institutions leadership in involving youth and making sure that the youth are present in the communities is, I guess, what you're asking.
I think a dialogue on campus like this would be beautiful, even if you, the question was asked, if we had just a religious dialogue on campus, where people could open up and have a safe space, or just something like that. People need to talk, and people need to be heard. So, I think that's my best answer.
I'll say from a high school student perspective, I think actually Hillel, from the Jewish perspective, Hillel is a really good place for college students, which we don't have in high schools so much. Not that we need a building and a space as Hillel is, but more of an organization, and that is really hard in Akron. There are a few in this area, Cleveland. There are more Jewish high school organizations. Akron does not have very many high school age Jewish people, so that's a really difficult question for the Akron Jewish community, I would say. But if there were something like that, I would be involved in it. So I would say getting Jewish youth here and getting them engaged is the number one goal before anything else.
Tangible goals for both centers would just be to increase attendance as much as possible. Just drag people, drag your neighbor, you can get behind that for sure. Just increasing as many voices in the room as ears in the room, and increasing that dialogue. As for youth, we have increased our work with the youth and really dialed in on that. And so since then we're increasing our youth attendance on Isaac's side. So seeing more of that would be good. That's a tangible goal as well.
Yeah, I think that I'll say that from my own personal experience with engaging people in general is literally to force them to do things. Like taking an interest in the youth that are already present in your communities and saying, hey, I see that you're at this event, can you hand out these papers? Well, hey, can you make an announcement? Or just engage in them in very menial tasks and then slowly upping it, oh, can you join this committee? And now you're stuck in this for the rest of your life. That's how I'm kind of here now. It's not that I was forced to, but I ended up enjoying doing the work that people engaged me in because they made the effort to see that, hey, this is somebody that I can see doing great things. Looking at you, but yeah, that's my own thought. But I saw one hand and I do want to entertain that. So this will be the last comment. And I'll keep it short. Appreciate it.
One thing that I think is really important, first off, I really appreciate all of you. I'm a middle school teacher, and I think it's really important to get our groups together, our younger kids, just to get together and just play together and be together and become friends. They don't necessarily have to discuss these big issues, but if we just had picnics together where they got to know each other and felt comfortable with each other, and then the conversations come, right? I bring my students here to the mosque and we meet with the students that are here, that go to school here, and we don't have enough time, and it usually takes a good 30 minutes to get them comfortable, and then they start opening up. So I feel if we were able to you guys were working with your youth, and I can talk to our educator at Temple as well, to get the young kids together, not just their age, but little kids. I think that might be important too.
That's a great point. Thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to welcome Art up to conclude our event for the night. And I would like to thank everyone again and thank our panelists for joining us.
Thank you, Sahar, for doing a wonderful job with us tonight. And I'd like to thank our panelists as well, Dale, Martha, and Yasir. Just did a wonderful job, so thank you very much. Our topic tonight was youth in our communities. And I couldn't help but think of a musician, Debbie Friedman, who passed away about 12 years ago. But she was a composer and a singer, but much more than that. She was really a rock star within the Jewish community. And there's a song that she wrote based on Joel, one of the prophets in the Bible. And I'm just going to read the words. I'll do you all a favor and not try to sing it. But I think it's appropriate for the topic tonight. Childhood was for fantasies, nursery rhymes, and toys. The world was much too busy to understand small girls and boys. As I grew up, I came to learn that life was not a game, that heroes were just people that we call another name. And the old shall dream dreams, and the youth shall see visions, and our hopes shall rise up to the sky. We must live for today, we must build for tomorrow. Give us time, give us strength, give us life. Now I'm grown, the years have passed, I've come to understand that there are choices to be made, and my life's at my command. I cannot have a future till I embrace the past. I promise to pursue the challenge. Time is going fast. Today's the day that I take my stand. The future's mine to hold. Commitments that I make today are dreams from days of old. I have to make the way for generations come and go. I have to teach them what I've learned, so they will come to know that the old shall dream dreams, and the youth shall see visions, and our hopes shall rise up to the sky. We must live for today, we must build for tomorrow. Give us time, give us strength, give us life. So with that, I'd just like to really talk for a second about our next program and what is going on for the balance of the year. I promise we will have many more dialogues this year. Now that we're able to meet face to face, we can do a whole lot more. We're going to take a break for Ramadan, and then on April 27th, and you all will get email. And if you're not on the email list, please see Sahar or me, and we'll get you on the list so that we can send the emails to you. But April 27th is the next one. We're going to be talking about marriage and family, about interfaith marriage, assimilation, and a whole lot of other things about marriage and family. So that will be at Temple Israel. And then we will be getting together very soon to figure out what our next topics and our dates will be going for the rest of the year. So thank you again to our panel. I think this was a wonderful program tonight.
I just want to give up that suggestion of picnic that we just heard. Think of a picnic first week of May or second week of May for this group and bring others. Let's have a picnic. We have a pavilion. Think about it and let's have that seed and let it grow.
Again, thank you all so much. I hope you guys have a great night. Drive home safe, and we'll see you in our next session.